欢迎收看本期的出海瞭望。今天呢，我们非常荣幸请到了克劳斯·维哈格先生来做客我们的演播室。维哈格先生呢是10XInnovation Lab 的联合创始人兼 CEO， 专注于全球创业者与硅谷的资源对接。Hello, Mr. Klaus, and very pleasure to meet you here. And welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So your book, actually called The Global Class, provides a systematic roadmap and also a practical tour for the enterprises to go global. So first of all, can you share with me the top secrets for the world-class enterprises to go global and also staying invincible in a global market?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, of course, no company is invincible when it comes to going international because it's a very, very difficult journey. And there is a lot of facets to going global. There is the mindset of an organization. There is the structure you have as a company to support growth. There's a methodology to discover and uncover localization required for a market, and there's management and team building and hiring. So it's very complex, but one of the most important things that we often say when we engage with leaders is that they're aligned around their priorities. And we talk about priority, we talk about growth levers, and when we talk about growth levers, it's about how aligned are you around, should you focus on new products, new markets, on new segments. And oftentimes when we meet with companies, they focus on new products, new segments, and then new markets. And when it's the lowest new markets, it often will influence your ability to be successful if it's a low priority. So you got to make sure it's a high priority for your team to be successful, because that will cascade down inside the organization around the resources you allocate, the priorities your team will give towards global expansion. So that's really, really important. And the other part that we talk about is mindset. And in the book, we coined a term called the global class mindset. And here we have like two types. There is the sort of traditional way of thinking about building the organization. And then there is a little bit the new way in terms of building a company that we call a global class mindset. And you think global, that will impact the way you view your products, you build your team, and you build your culture for global growth, and also have a view on global expansion, that you will localize the business for new markets. And then the traditional way of architecting a business is more the old way of doing things, where you look at your business more from the market perspective that you're in. So you have much more of a home market bias, and you hire talent from your market. That then makes it very difficult to expand globally, because you've built a very specific culture around the organization.
And you have done a lot of interviews, maybe much more than mine, because you have done like 400 interviews.
Yes.
You have interviewed group leaders like from the companies like Google or Zoom and Airbnb. All of them are the giant companies. And you also pointed out the 10 most common mistakes that the companies will make when going global. So if you could just pick one, the most fatal one, what would it be and why?
Well, I kind of already addressed the most important, that's leadership alignment, but then another part is making sure your organization is architected to support growth. And by that I mean your organizational structure, right? So when you go international, it's often perceived, okay, we need to hire someone in Japan or in Vietnam and go export or sell the product. But in reality, when you do that, you also need to realize that the context of that market is very different. So you need to support the adaptation and the localization of the business, which means you may need to change your product, you may need to change your marketing, you may need to change the way you sell, and you need support from the headquarters to support those adjustments and localization. So you got to make sure you have teams allocated towards supporting global growth at the headquarter level. And oftentimes that's not very well defined. So you got to make sure there's transparency, there's accountability to support growth. Otherwise, oftentimes things will not materialize in any success at all.
So localization is very important.
Absolutely.
Get the support from the headquarters is also very important.
Absolutely.
So actually for the successful companies, going global is not about like copying their domestic models at home, right? So from all the cases you've seen, which like global expansion models are most suitable for the nowadays the rapidly changing international environment?
Right. So there's no one defined model, I would say. There's different ways to approach things, right? So there's organizations that are fully architected to be global in the very beginning, right? So have a diverse workforce and they're scaling very rapidly and quickly. And then there's other ways where the company has been successful in their market and then they start to kind of like build different models in other countries. So they sort of like hire an international CEO to lead the market expansion into global markets, and that can be successful as well. So there's not one model, but one of the most important things we talk about in the book is to make sure you do customer discovery and customer development, meaning you learn from the market to understand how to adapt your model for the market. So really doing that is critical in our opinion, right? Because again, you can't copy the model from China or from Japan into Malaysia or any other market, because there's a different cultural context in that market. And there's a different regulatory environment in that market as well. So I've seen that many times over and over again, where they sort of like discover that midway into the expansion and all of a sudden have to reactively course correct the market expansion.
So no model can be called just it's the perfect model.
No, exactly.
You have to learn the market first and then custom it according to the different maybe features of the market, right?
Exactly.
Just now you just mentioned mindset is very important, and you come up with a new term called the entrepreneurial mindset. So how do you interpret this concept, and can you give me one example to illustrate like how different from the entrepreneurial mindset, the traditional one?
Yeah, so that's actually one of my favorite concepts, to be honest, because as we were sitting during the pandemic, right, and writing this book, we interviewed 400 executives from like Zoom, Airbnb, Apple, Chinese companies to Japanese companies, etc. And we sort of like uncovered there's a unique trait that all these business leaders have when it comes to leading and driving global expansion. And they all had sort of this formative experience where they have lived in another country, being embedded in another culture, that gave them this like flexibility to think differently. So basically, we then coined that term called an entrepreneur mindset, which also includes the entrepreneurial mindset. So if you imagine a pyramid, in the bottom you have the entrepreneurial mindset, people who are resilient, growth focused, entrepreneurial. In the middle you have the company mindset, which is more like people who can build coalition and buy-in inside an organization to get resources, support in very complex organizational structures. These two layers together forms the intrapreneurial mindset, like you innovate within the company. But then the tip of the iceberg, or the tip of the pyramid, is a culture mindset. People who are global mindedness, who has that culture curiosity, that are willing to learn and adapt, basically. So these three layers forms the entrepreneurial mindset as international.
And you also introduced the localizing premier analysis as a tool.
Yes.
So for a company who wants to discover a new market, which three dimensions would you advise them to analyze first?
Right. So again, this is like a concept we created to help communicate and articulate how you need to change your model when you go to a new market, right? So the localization premium analysis is technically 6 categories. On the top you have sales, marketing, and products. And in the bottom you have admin, which can be taxation, compliance, transfer pricing, etc. Organizational premium is org structure, the team you're building, etc. And then there's infrastructure premium, which is for physical products, supply chain, digital product, tech stack, payment infrastructure. So these are the 6 categories, but oftentimes in the very beginning, we just focus on the go-to-market aspect, which is sales, product, and marketing. Because you got to understand, okay, on the marketing side, how should you adjust your value proposition? How should you adjust your channels on targeting customers?
Yeah.
What segments should you focus on? And for example, one of the things in Japan, when LinkedIn expanded to Japan, they didn't focus on hiring, because in the US, LinkedIn is all about hiring. That's a hiring solution platform. But in Japan, they don't change jobs that often. They stay in the same job for 30 to 40 years.
Relatively stable society in Japan.
Exactly. Yeah. So they learned, you know what, maybe hiring is not the best value proposition for the Japanese market, but let's focus on getting better at your current job.
Okay.
And that changed the way they then used in terms of products on the platform, learning and development, education, upskilling, then became the focus on products on the platform as well. And then they also sold differently into Japan, because in Japan, in the very beginning, the perception of going onto the platform was still hiring.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get people from mid-management on the platform. So they focused on getting the top executives on the platform. They gave the permission structure to get middle management onto the platform as well. So it changed their go-to-market for the Japanese market, because the context of the culture was so different.
Yeah. And let's focus on the Chinese market. So
Sure.
how do you see the trends of the Chinese enterprises are going global in recent years?
Yeah, so first of all, Mel, I want to say I am not an expert on China at all. But I think like one of the big challenges oftentimes with the Chinese market is that it's such a big market, right? So you naturally will build your business for the Chinese market. And so when they then start to expand, they built very much a Chinese architected organization. And so then expanding internationally can be a little bit difficult because of the culture and also the organizational structure as well as a company. And so that's why I often see a lot of Chinese businesses just establishing a CEO internationally, and then they will lead the expansion sort of a little bit autonomously away from the headquarter. So they can make their own decisions.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes when it comes to like Asian businesses, when they expand, it's very hierarchical the way the management structure is.
Yes.
And that can be making a little bit difficult for companies to expand.
It takes time to make a decision, final decision.
Exactly. But also the decision is often from the headquarter.
Yeah.
But when you expand the business, you got to make decisions on the ground. Because again, you need to adapt your model as well. Marketing, sales, value proposition, etc. So you want to make sure you enable the local team to also have autonomy in decision making as well.
Okay. And which industry for the Chinese enterprises going global shows the greatest potential in your opinion?
I mean, to be honest, China is a powerhouse in general in terms of industries, right? You have everything from biotech to infrastructure to financial services, etc. So there's so many industries in China that is so strong to promote internationally. But one of the big things, of course, as well, consumer products. It's really looking at your capabilities. You have strong manufacturing. You can supply that very efficiently at a very cost-effective rate to then market internationally. And then all the other expertise you build out in terms of infrastructure as well. I know China is also expanding a lot into Africa, Latin America, etc., because you perfected the ability to really scale things very efficiently. So when it comes to the Chinese economy, it's very, very strong to promote internationally, because you have very unique capabilities in China for global markets.
And for the Chinese companies, what hidden risks are mostly easily overlooked when going global?
Yeah, so it goes back to my comment a little bit earlier, the organizational architecture, right? So decision making, hierarchical structures can limit the ability to expand internationally. Because again, the ability to respond very quickly is important when you go international. To be competitive, you got to be first at responding to customer needs. And if you always have to go back and get permission, then it becomes really, really hard, right? So feedback loop is critical, very efficiently from headquarters to local markets, but then granting the autonomy and trust for that local team to react, adjust, and execute is really, really, really important. So that I would say would be one of the hidden challenges for Chinese organizations primarily.
So if a Chinese entrepreneur coming to you and say like, I want to take my company going global to the next level,
Right.
And what will be your first piece of advice to him?
I asked him one question, or her one question. Are you willing to change? And the reason why I say it is like the human, are you willing to change? Because when you go global, you have assumptions, you have biases, you have ways of thinking and ways of presuming that things are in a certain way when you go international. But in reality, when you go global, things are very different. And so oftentimes I see entrepreneurs coming into Silicon Valley, right? They come in with their own assumptions. And those entrepreneurs that fail are those entrepreneurs who doesn't adapt, right? So it's also adapting yourself. And so I often hear the story of a Korean founder called John Kim. He's the founder of Zenbird. He came to the US. And one of the most important things he said, it was that willingness to change himself. Because what he did to himself was to say, in order for me to adapt, I need to change my way of being. And he made very simple adjustments. I stopped consuming Korean media, but consumed global media. He changed the keyboard from Korean to English. Because he needed to change the way he viewed the world and his mindset as well. Right?
All the behaviors in a daily life.
Exactly, but also in the organization. So one of the big frustrations he had in the very beginning was when he, for example, asked for a competitive benchmark inside the company, they always came with Korean competitors. Until one day he said, I don't want to hear anything about Korean competitors. I want to hear about global competition because I want to build a global company. So it's leading with intention. And the other story I share oftentimes is with the Rakuten founder. If you know Rakuten from Japan, in the early days of Rakuten, he also decided that he wanted to build a global company. So he established something called Englandization within the business, which essentially was that they needed to speak English at the office in Japan, which was unheard of. So much so that it was in the media, and everybody from large organizations said he was crazy because you can't speak English at a Japanese office in Japan.
Challenging.
So it's challenging a little bit the way you would operate, and really thinking global is really important.
So are you willing to change yourself, adapt yourself to a completely different culture and jump out of your comfort zone is very important.
Absolutely.
If someone really wants to take his company to the next level, right?
1,000%, 1,000%.
Okay, thank you, Klaus.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice talking to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. Thank you so much.